Hello there, dear viewer. Once again, I have some 4K Blu-ray recommendations for you all. These are just some of the 4K discs I've been watching lately and have been having a great time with. So let's begin with the 1990s classic film, Point Break, which has just had this 4K release in the UK. This is the film where Keanu Reeves stars as an FBI agent who goes undercover and infiltrates this group of surfers who are believed to be organising these bank robbery heists. And they are being led by Patrick Swayze, so there's a bit of a cat and mouse thing going on between these two characters, and it's just a lot of fun. Now, this did get a release in the US last year, I think. I didn't manage to get my hands on that release, but from what I've heard from people who have both of these different 4K discs, they are saying that this disc looks pretty much exactly the same. And in fact, some people are saying that the encoding on this UK 4K is better than the US disc. I can't say that for certain because, like I said, I've not seen that US disc, but my experience with watching this brand new release, I had a great time with it and absolutely no issues with the visuals or the audio. It just looked beautiful. As you can see, it comes with this slipcover which has a foil shiny effect, and you can actually notice some of it has peeled off in the corner. So I don't think these slipcovers are probably that durable, but it's definitely better than having no slipcover at all. And inside you get the 4K disc, you get a Blu-ray disc which has some of the special features, because there are no special features on the 4K disc. We have a variety of art cards here, which I'm not an art card person, I don't really know what to do with them, but you do get these if you want to frame them on your wall or something like that. It does also come with this fold out single-sided poster. So again, I don't think I'm going to be displaying this on my wall or anything, but I suppose it's a nice thing to have. Overall, I'm happy with this release. I think the visual presentation and the audio is incredible. Not much more desired from me in terms of that area. Sticking with 4K discs from Icon Distribution, I have Malcolm X, the Spike Lee movie, which I think is one of his best movies, perhaps even his best, and it has a tremendous performance from Denzel Washington, one of his best performances, and that's saying a lot because he is a tremendous actor. I really do love him. Now, this also previously had a 4K release in the United States from the Criterion Collection, which I do have on my shelf over there. And this time I was actually able to do a sort of very vague comparison between the two discs. And I have to say that the presentation on these two discs look basically the same. And I would probably say that the encoding is better on the UK disc compared to Criterion's. But for the majority of people, you're probably not going to notice any difference at all if you were to compare the two. So what that means is that if you were looking to get this film on a 4K and you didn't quite want to import the Region A disc, then finally you can get this on a UK disc. Again, it comes in one of these foil slip covers which has a bit of a shiny effect to it. Same artwork on the case inside, and just like with Point Break, you get a selection of art cards, and again there is a single-sided poster which just has the same artwork that is on the front of the case. In terms of special features, there's just some deleted scenes introduced by Spike Lee. So in terms of getting extras on the disc, the Criterion Collection edition in the US has so much more to offer. So if you're looking for a more well-rounded, complete edition, then I'd suggest getting that. But if you're in the UK and you just want the great picture quality and sound quality, then you can't really go wrong with this one. Next up on 4K, I got the film Source Code. This is the science fiction movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal, directed by Duncan Jones. In the story, we follow this man who has to keep reliving the same event over and over again. He is on a moving train which eventually blows up in a terrorist attack. And every time the train blows up, he gets sent back to the start of the time loop. And each time he experiences this, he has to work out new things and investigate new clues and interact with different people on the train, different potential suspects, all the while working out what is actually happening to him. This is yet another disc which has had a release in the US, but just recently it got a release in Europe and in the UK from Studio Canal. This is Studio Canal's German media book, which I really wanted to get because of how cool the artwork is. And I've got a bit of a collection of media books on my shelf now. It's all very minimal, not really any ratings logos or anything like that. And if I show you inside, you get the 4K disc, which of course is region free. and in the back there is a Blu-ray disc as well, which is region B. Inside you do get the media book booklet, but of course the language is all in German. So I am going to have to start practicing my German if I want to actually read the essays and articles that are in all of my German media books. But for the artwork and just the display piece alone, I really wanted to get this one. But for the most part, I thought this looked very good indeed and sounded pretty damn good as well. There were some bits of the film where the quality seemingly drops quite a lot, and it looks like they have used selective digital noise reduction in those sequences. Now, I don't know if the original materials of those parts of the film have suffered in some way and then they needed to use digital effects to kind of clean up damage or something, because I know that the film was partly shot on film and then partly done digitally. So just be aware that there are some sequences that don't look quite as good as others, but it isn't the majority of the film. It really is just select few shots, not even full scenes, that look like that. I have also recently viewed the UK Studio Canal 4K disc, and it looks exactly the same. It is just the same disc essentially. So whether you want to get the German media book or the Studio Canal UK 4K disc, either are great options if you want to get the film in great quality. Sticking with a Studio Canal 4K, I have the film Soldier Blue, and this is the Steelbook edition. It hasn't been released in a normal case on the 4K. It has in the Blu-ray though, as far as I'm aware. So if you want this on 4K currently, you do have to get this Steelbook edition. Now, this was a film that I was not expecting to get a 4K release anytime soon, but I'm very happy it did, because the overall results are very pleasing. It looks beautiful and it sounds great as well. The film is a revisionist Western that really challenges the classical American Western view of conquering the lands and the particular treatment of Indian tribes that would be encountered by the US Army. And in particular, this film is looking at a certain massacre, and it shows the massacre in full detail. However, the build up to the massacre in the film follows this young soldier who has escaped from a conflict where some of the Indians had driven back the US Army and were killing all of the soldiers. So he manages to escape that conflict, along with one of the white women who have been captured or have been taken in by the Indian tribe. And most of the film is centered on this relationship between this young woman and this young soldier. One of the revisionist ideas about this Western film is that her character, she's very modern, she's very vulgar, the use of her language is quite shocking, and it really doesn't fit with what we would expect from a classical American Western. I do think that this build-up between these two characters and how their relationship evolves over the course of the film does sort of drag on a bit, but then it leads up to this climactic battle, this massacre. It's not a battle really, and yeah, it is ultimately very shocking. So you can see from above, the steelbook has this beautiful design with the feather in the middle, which is embossed, so it does stick out from the steelbook. And on the back you have a similar image which has these very nice colours as well. Inside the steelbook you get Soldier Blue on the 4K disc, which is region free, and then you also get the Blu-ray release from Studio Canal, which is region B locked. I've got the J card here that comes with the steelbook, and included on the special features there's an interview with the actress Candice Bergen and an audio commentary by critics Steve Mitchell and Howard S. Berger. So overall, I think it's another great release from Studio Canal. Then from Sony, one of their Columbia Pictures releases, we have the 4K of The Lady from Shanghai, Orson Welles' movie, which was sadly not his original image for the film because there was studio interference and he wasn't able to finish this film how he wanted. Supposedly, the film was about 2.5 hours long before it got reduced to what we have here. This is a film noir where we follow this young Irishman played by Orson Welles himself as he gets involved with this couple and this plot to kill someone. He meets Rita Hayworth's character, who is this femme fatale, and Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth were actually married at the time of making this film, but they soon got divorced after the film was made, and there's murder and mystery and intrigue involved. I won't say much more than that, but it is a very good film noir story, but you do only really see the skeleton of what the film could be. There are certain sequences in the film that have become very famous, particularly the mirror sequence at the end of the film, but I really like the film for a lot of its location shooting and just its beautiful cinematography, which we would come to expect from the films that Orson Welles would make. I think the film looks very good on this 4K disc. It's probably the best the film will ever look now, and I didn't see any issues with the picture at all. So it's a beautiful presentation from Sony, who typically do very good 4K discs, especially of older films that look like this and just really do deserve the 4K treatment. As you can see, it comes with this slip cover, and if I take the case out, the case inside has the exact same artwork. It comes with a digital code on here, which has already been used sadly, so I won't show that. And you get the 4K disc. In terms of special features on this, you do get the commentary with Peter Bogdanovich, and then a filmed conversation with him from the early 2000s talking about this film. Peter Bogdanovich was an Orson Welles expert, as well as being a filmmaker in his own right. Now, I do have a previous release of The Lady from Shanghai. This is Indicator's Blu-ray and DVD release from about 7 years ago. And this is actually taken from the same 4K restoration from the original nitrate negative. The 4K disc technology just allows you to get more out of that 4K restoration that was previously shown on this Blu-ray. However, there are some special features on the Indicator Blu-ray that might lead me to perhaps keep this release. But that's The Lady from Shanghai on 4K. I thoroughly recommend it if you are a fan of film noir or a particular Orson Welles fan. And I was quite surprised that this got a standalone release, because it looked like the kind of thing that they would include in their Columbia Classics box sets. So I'm quite happy that I was able to just get this on its own. Next up, I've got a huge release, not just because it's in a big box, but a film that I was particularly so excited to get on 4K. And happily, the results have not let me down. The film I'm talking about is The Conversation, Francis Ford Coppola's classic movie from the 1970s. Released in 1974, the film has undergone a 4K restoration from the team at American Zoetrope. So it has been looked at by Francis Ford Coppola himself and the people that he works with closely, who he trusts with this kind of thing. And like I said, the results are amazing. There is great detail in the image, much more than on previous releases. I actually have my old Blu-ray release from Studio Canal here, which I'll talk about in a moment. And you can't really go wrong with the presentation here. The 4K brings so much more clarity to the image that we didn't see in the older Blu-ray. The addition of the Dolby Vision HDR grade really helps all of the usual things, color, contrast, etc. And I didn't spot any sort of issues with compression or any sort of digital artifacts in the image, which was a great thing as well. The only real thing for me to note about the visuals on this 4K release is that at some point it did have me questioning how the film has been color graded for this release compared to previous releases, because it does look quite a lot different to this older Blu-ray. The presentation on this Blu-ray actually looked quite washed out when you compare the two, and I sort of think that the presentation on the old Blu-ray was wrong and is probably not how it should have looked. So for the most part, the presentation on the 4K is a lot more warmer, the colours look a bit more rich, a bit more vivid, but there are some parts where I don't know if I'm just so used to seeing the kind of teal look in these restorations, but there are parts of this where Gene Hackman is stood against a wall, which I think is meant to be a white wall, but it does look kind of teal. And I don't know if the film originally looked like that or if that is sort of part of this revisionism that we're seeing with brand new colour grades. But that only stood out in very few parts of the film. For the most part, this restoration looked absolutely beautiful, and I can't really fault it otherwise. So I do thoroughly recommend the presentation of The Conversation that is on this 4K disc. I didn't really talk much about what the film is about. It is this paranoia thriller about this man who records this audio because he's snooping on someone for a private client, and he suspects that there is some, nefarious things going on here, and perhaps people are in danger. So this sends him on this paranoid trip of investigating it himself and following up on these leads. And yeah, I won't say much more than that, but it is a brilliant film. Now, in terms of getting this 4K release, it's only available on this big limited edition currently. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it is quite an expensive box. It's currently £60. And at £60 for one film, this actually makes this one of the most expensive single title 4K releases ever that doesn't also concurrently have a standard edition for you to buy at the same time. Now, Studio Canal will most likely release their standard 4K disc later down the line at around £20–25. But let me show you what you get inside. So you can see the brand new artwork for this release. I really do like the artwork that they've gone for here. What I don't like for a collector's edition, and I think this is fair criticism, is that for a limited edition box that is meant to be like a collector's display piece, it doesn't need to have ratings logos on the front and on the side and on the back, because they could have very easily used a J card, much like Second Sight or Radiance or other labels do for their big box sets. And I also don't think for a collector's edition they need to put a quote like this timeout quote saying devastatingly brilliant. If I take this out and put this on the front, that is what the box could have looked like on the front, and that would have looked so much cleaner, and I would have much preferred to have that, because as it stands with the ratings logos and this quote, it isn't something that I really want to have on display like I would with a release from any of those other labels that take much more care in terms of the ratings logos and such like that. But anyway, opening up the box, you get this magnetic clasp. There's a quote here which is all about surveillance. The first thing you get inside is the case, which has the 4K disc and the Blu-ray disc. The next thing inside is a poster. This is the original theatrical poster, which I can't even fit on camera, but that's a nice thing to have. There's also another poster with the brand new artwork, so if you wanted to display this, you can as well. There is this collector's edition booklet, which if we flick through it, it's about 60 pages long, and it has some different writings about the film. And then the last thing that you get is this. Now, this is a cassette tape of the original motion picture soundtrack for The Conversation. Now, I do not have anything that plays cassettes, but it is a legitimate cassette and it will play the soundtrack. Now, I can't really tell you how it sounds, except someone who I do trust their opinion on all things audio, who does actually collect cassettes still and will collect all these fancy limited run cassettes, etc. They actually said that the cassette sounds pretty bad. Now, that is just an anecdotal thing that I heard from a friend, although it is a friend that I do trust. They told me that the way that the cassette has been made and the materials used on this cassette, they're not really up to scratch in terms of other modern cassettes that are being made. So to be honest with you, my thoughts on the cassette inclusion is, yes, it's very nice because it fits with the theme of the film and the analog tape reels, etc. But ultimately, this is not going to be usable by basically anyone that buys this. I can't imagine anyone can play cassettes who actually buys this edition. And my worry is that the inclusion of this is the kind of thing that has actually hiked up the price of this release. And I got sent this release to review for the channel. I'll just be transparent about that. And if I wasn't sent this for review, I would certainly have just waited for the standard edition release that will come from Studio Canal sometime in the future. For me, the 4K disc and the presentation of that comes first and foremost. And the addition of this stuff is nice, but if all of this extra stuff is making this release £30 or £40 more expensive than the standard 4K disc would cost, then quite frankly, I'd prefer to go with the cheaper option. So my honest thoughts about this release are that the 4K disc looks great, and I'm extremely happy with the presentation of the film on the disc. Beyond the disc itself, it's going to be up to you whether you think that the extra stuff here that you get in the box is worth shelling out the extra money for. Then I have something very exciting that I was looking forward to. It's The Zone of Interest on 4K. This is A24's release from the US, but I had to get this sent over to me from the United States because for now it doesn't seem to have any sort of UK release announced, which is a real shame. The Zone of Interest is a serious film following the family of the commandant of Auschwitz, and they live in a house right next to the concentration camp. And in their own words, they have this dream life there. They're able to raise their children. They have this land where they have this garden and they grow vegetables and crops there. And the children go to school and they have maids who help out with all of the tasks around the house. And the idea of the film is it's juxtaposing the perfect family life and the sort of banality of everyday life, you know, the ordinary lifestyle that we all live day to day, juxtaposing that with what is going on in the camp just over the wall. And the central way of commenting on this is by not actually depicting any of the violence or atrocities that were going on just next door. All we really do see or hear is just in the periphery, in the background. It's occasional gunshots or screams. It's nothing more than that. But all of this is used to create this feeling of dread and despair. But the film is exactly just that. It is just that, sustained for the entire runtime of the film. And I was kind of expecting some sort of progression through the film. Not that it was going to lead up to any sort of violence or anything, but there really isn't much progression at all in terms of the characters or the themes being progressed throughout the film. You really do get everything that this film has going for it in the first 10 minutes, and then everything that comes after is just, it feels like a bit more of the same. And yeah, it is quite anxiety inducing and stressful and depressing. And, you know, it really does make you think and contemplate about not just what went on here, but then looking at other aspects of life and how we deal with other terrible things that go on and our relationship to these things that go on in the world. What I'm trying to say here basically is that I think it's a very good film. It's a very powerful film. It's going to take more watches for me to, I think, fully grasp what some other people are getting from this film. Because on first viewing, I was perhaps expecting something slightly different, and that probably muddled how I appreciated this film. All of that said, the film does look and sound great on the 4K disc from A24. We have the HDR10 grade on here as well, and the film was mostly shot using natural light or no additional lights at all where they could get away with it. So the film does have a bit of a muted palette to it. It was meant to simulate real life. They didn't want to make this look like a Hollywood movie. And also the compositions in the film and the way the film is directed is also very striking. The film is often very still. The camera doesn't move too much. And even when it does start moving and tracking with a character, it is so tight and so composed. It is also clinical and it almost feels a bit removed from the action. And I guess that's the point, that as the viewer, we kind of distance ourselves from what is actually happening here. Inside the A24 case, it slides out like this, and you get this kind of digipack thing with the 4K disc here. And then if I slide this out, this has some bits in here. You can see some art cards of images from the film. Actually, I just realized I don't think these are stills from the film. These are actually photographs taken behind the scenes of the film. So I do stand corrected, because yeah, they do actually say props photographed on location by Kuba Kaminski. And yeah, these are all kind of similar photographs as well. We also have some great special features, including a sort of behind the scenes look at how the film was made. Then I'll just quickly talk about The Raid, which has this 4K edition from Umbrella Entertainment in Australia, and it comes in this great limited edition box set. I think The Raid is great, one of the best action films from the last sort of decade or so. I was very glad to hear it was getting a 4K restoration, and I believe it got a release from Sony in the US, but I didn't manage to get that one. And it had me very intrigued because The Raid has never been a film that looked particularly beautiful. It was shot using high-end consumer cameras, so not proper cinema cameras. But I think what they achieved with that gear was actually absolutely amazing. But I don't think time has been that kind to the presentation of the film. So when I heard that it was being restored in 4K by the filmmakers, I was very intrigued. The main thing that has changed here is the colour grade of the film is completely different to how it looked previously. And Gareth Evans has said that he never liked how the film looked when it was originally released. And I have to say that the new colour grade does suit the film much better. However, even though I think the new colour grade looks good, this is still a form of revisionism, changing how the film looked compared to how it was released originally. And I have to make a point of that because otherwise I would be a hypocrite not pointing it out when I mention so often how the colour grades have changed on these other 4K restorations and how it's not keeping in line with preserving the film. It's a whole conversation I'm sure we'll have time and time again in the future. But for now, the Raid looks very good on the 4K disc, and I'm very pleased with how it's turned out. There isn't crystal clear clarity, there are still limitations in terms of how the film was shot. It still isn't the most beautiful picture that you will get on the 4K format, but I think it does the film justice, and I had a great time rewatching it. I'll just very quickly show you what you get in the umbrella box. So first you get the film in this slipcover, which I really like, and the Blu-ray case is packed in quite tight, so you kind of have to pull at it a bit. But yeah, you get the 4K disc, and there is the poster here, which is the original poster and then double-sided with the brand new artwork. And then you get a Blu-ray as well, which has some of the special features on there. You get quite a lot of features on the release, including multiple audio commentaries and lots with Gareth Evans talking about the origins of this film and how he got into making films in Indonesia. You also get multiple art cards in here, which are just scenes from the film, so I don't really have much use for them. The really cool thing you do get here is the Raid, the graphic novel. So you get it in this hardbound book and you get the full graphic novel. So that is really cool. I haven't read this yet actually, so I'm probably going to do that tonight. And then you get another booklet which is behind the scenes experiences and art. And it's got some of the different poster art and some of the custom images that Umbrella put together for this. And then some of the writings and a Q&A and some bits from the script or storyboards, etc. So another great book. So all in all, a fantastic release from Umbrella. Very happy with the result. So there you have it. That was my big stack of 4K discs I've been watching lately. Hopefully you can take some of these as recommendations for things to buy, and I'll include some purchasing links in the description of this video, which if you use, they help support the channel at absolutely no additional cost to you. So thank you very much to whoever ends up using those links. If you want to stick around on the channel and get more recommendations from me, just click the video that's presented on screen right now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.